Welcome back to Talk Tickers. You know the show where we like to dig into the nitty-gritty of earnings calls. And today we're going to be focusing on Tractor Supply's recent release of their Q4 and full year 2024 performance.
Yeah, I think what jumps out to me initially is, everyone's talking about a slowing economy and, kind of a tough retail environment. And Tractor Supply really just blew the doors off. They had a record-breaking year, record results for both their top and bottom line.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, everyone was expecting kind of a tough year for retail in general. So
Yeah.
to see that kind of performance is really impressive. So let's break it down. What were some of the numbers that stood out to you?
Well, their net sales for 2024 just shy of $14.9 billion. That's with comparable store sales increase of 0.2%. So, they're not just growing by opening a bunch of new stores, they're actually growing same-store sales, which is really impressive.
And their digital business also had a huge year, over $1.1 billion in sales. So it seems like they're really hitting on all cylinders in terms of, appealing to both in-store and online shoppers.
Yeah, their omnichannel strategy is really paying off for them. But what I find really interesting is how they're capitalizing on these consumer trends. Things like sustainable living.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that. How are they kind of tapping into that?
Well, we've all seen the price of eggs going up, right? Well, Tractor Supply has seen a surge in sales related to backyard poultry. More and more people are raising their own chickens. Not just for the eggs, but for that sense of, self-sufficiency and connection with where their food comes from.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it speaks to a larger trend I think we're seeing, with people wanting to be more in control of their food sources and just kind of having that connection with nature.
Exactly. And it just shows how well Tractor Supply understands their core customer base. They're not just selling products, they're selling a lifestyle.
Yeah, and that sense of community is something that Tractor Supply has always been really good at fostering, both for their employees and for their customers.
Yeah.
And it looks like that's paying off for them, too.
Absolutely. Their employee turnover is incredibly low, which, tells you a lot about their company culture and how they treat their team. And the customer satisfaction scores are through the roof. It's clear that they prioritize those relationships.
And then you have the Neighbors Club loyalty program, which now has something like 38 million members. I mean, that's a huge network, and it just reinforces that whole community-driven approach.
Yeah, that program is a great example of how to build customer loyalty. And they're continuing to innovate with things like the acquisition of Aliveth, the online pet pharmacy.
Right. That's going to be interesting to see how they integrate that into their existing offerings. It seems like a natural fit with their whole, life out here kind of focus.
It is. It's all about providing that one-stop shop for their customers, giving them everything they need for that rural lifestyle, the convenience, the value, and the trust.
So they had a phenomenal 2024. But the question is, can they keep this momentum going? What's the outlook for 2025? Yeah.
Well, their projections show continued growth. They're expecting net sales to increase between 5 and 7%, so somewhere in the range of $15.6 to $15.9 billion.
Wow, those are some strong numbers. But I do see that they're expecting maybe a slightly slower pace of growth than in 2024.
Okay.
I wonder if that has anything to do with the potential changes in tariffs with the new administration coming in.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor. They're keeping a close eye on tariffs, could have a big impact on retailers like Tractor Supply. But, they have a history of navigating these kinds of challenges.
Right. Experience goes a long way in these situations. And it seems like they're taking a proactive approach rather than just reacting to things as they come up.
Exactly. And that's where their Life Out Here 2030 strategy comes in. This is about setting themselves up for the long haul, really cementing their position in the market.
Okay, now this is where it gets really exciting. Tell us more about this strategy. What are some of the key things they're focusing on for the future?
Well, they're looking at things like direct sales, really tailoring their store assortments to local needs and expanding their final mile delivery service. So, you could order a bunch of feed, fencing, whatever you need, and have it delivered straight to your farm.
That's amazing. And talk about convenience.
Yeah.
And they're also partnering with Field and Stream to offer a wider range of hunting and outdoor products. So it seems like they're really covering all the bases.
It's a really comprehensive strategy that shows just how well they understand their customers and how committed they are to adapting to the changing retail landscape.
We're back with Talk Tickers, continuing our look at Tractor Supply's latest earnings call.
One of the themes that keeps coming up for me is how they're not just focused on selling things, but on building those long-term relationships with their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that Neighbors Club, 38 million members, it's like they've created their own little ecosystem, and now they're bringing Aliveth into the mix, that online pet pharmacy. It's a really smart move.
Right, think about it. You're already going to Tractor Supply for all your other needs, feed, tools, clothes, and now you can get your pet's medication there too. It's all about convenience, especially for folks who live outside of the city.
And convenience is key these days. But they're not just stopping at adding products, they're investing in direct sales and expanding their final mile delivery service. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, those are game changers. Especially in a world where you can order just about anything online and have it show up at your door. Being able to get bulk orders of feed or fencing, whatever you need delivered right to your farm, that's huge.
It's like they're taking that classic Tractor Supply experience and bringing it into the 21st century, merging the physical store with the digital world.
Exactly. They're meeting their customers where they are, whether that's online or in the store. But they also know that it's not just about convenience. You need to have the right products, the things that their customers actually want and need.
And that's where that partnership with Field and Stream comes in. It's a great way to tap into that growing interest in hunting and outdoor recreation, especially among younger folks.
Right. It's not just about bringing in new customers, though. It's also about giving their existing customers more options, showing them that Tractor Supply can be their go-to for all their outdoor needs.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into their financials. We talked about some of the highlights earlier, but I want to get a bit more granular. What are some of the key takeaways from their Q4 and full year performance?
Sure. So big picture, they had a record year. Net sales just shy of $14.9 billion, and diluted earnings per share hit a record 2.04 split adjusted. That's pretty impressive considering the economic headwinds they were facing.
Yeah, no doubt those are strong numbers. But let's zero in on Q4 specifically. How do they do in terms of comparable store sales and transaction growth?
Their comparable store sales were up a healthy 0.6% in Q4, and that was driven by a 2.3% increase in comp transactions. So they're not just raising prices, they're actually getting more people in the door, and those people are buying more stuff.
That's a good sign for the long term. We did talk about a slight dip in gross margin, though. Can you remind me what was behind that?
Yeah, the gross margin decreased by 9 basis points to 35.2% compared to Q4 of 2023. But that was mainly because they had such a strong margin in the same quarter last year, so it's more of a tough comparison than anything else.
Okay, so basically holding steady, which is still pretty good, all things considered. Now let's talk about expenses. We know they've been investing for growth, but how did that impact their SG&A in Q4?
As a percentage of net sales, their SG&A, including depreciation and amortization, did go up by 60 basis points to 26.8%. But that was largely due to planned investments, like that new distribution center they brought online.
So they're spending money to make money. It's a classic growth story. But how did all of this affect their operating margin for the quarter?
Well, their operating margin did decline by 69 basis points to 8.4%. But again, a lot of that was due to those planned investments.
So still a very respectable margin considering the circumstances.
Right.
Now let's not forget about the shareholders. How did Tractor Supply reward their investors in 2024?
They returned over $1 billion to shareholders through dividends and share repurchases, and they've now increased their dividend for 15 years in a row.
That's a pretty solid track record. It shows a real commitment to returning value to their shareholders. Of course, past performance isn't a guarantee of future results. There are always risks to consider.
Absolutely. Investing is never without risk, but Tractor Supply has consistently shown that they care about their shareholders, which is definitely a good sign.
Welcome back to Talk Tickers, listeners. We're wrapping up our deep dive into Tractor Supply's Q4 and full year 2024 earnings call.
We've hit a lot of points, financial strategy. We even talked about chickens.
Yeah, it's been a good conversation. But before we sign off, I want to touch on their Life Out Here 2030 strategy again.
Yeah.
They're clearly playing the long game here, setting themselves up for long-term success.
It's not just about reacting to the market, it's about trying to anticipate where it's going. And their investments in direct sales and that final mile delivery service show that they're not afraid to take risks to stay ahead.
For sure. Those are game changers, especially for those rural customers. Imagine being able to order everything you need for your farm and have it delivered right to your door. I mean, talk about convenience.
Right, and it really shows how they're blending that in-store experience with the online world, creating this seamless experience for their customers.
But at the same time, they're not forgetting their roots. They're still that company that understands what life out here is all about.
Absolutely. That deep understanding of their customer base is one of their biggest strengths. They know what their customers want, and they're constantly finding new ways to deliver it, whether it's through new product services or shopping experiences.
We can't forget about that partnership with Field and Stream. It's a smart move to tap into the growing popularity of outdoor recreation and bring in a new generation of customers.
Yeah, it's a win-win for both companies. Tractor Supply gets access to a wider range of outdoor gear, and Field & Stream gets to leverage Tractor Supply's reach and loyal customer base.
So it's clear that Tractor Supply is a company that's constantly evolving, adapting to the changing needs of its customers. They're not just sitting back and watching. They're actively looking for new opportunities to grow and innovate.
Exactly. That's what makes them so interesting to watch. They're not just reacting to the market, they're shaping it. They're not just riding the wave, they're creating their own.
Now, of course, like with any investment, there are risks to consider. The economy is still a bit uncertain, and the competitive landscape is always changing. But Tractor Supply has a proven track record of overcoming challenges and coming out stronger on the other side.
Yeah. They have a solid business model, a strong management team, and a deep understanding of their market. They're built to last.
So for investors who are looking for exposure to the retail sector, Tractor Supply is definitely worth a closer look. They're well positioned for continued growth and success.
Now, before we wrap up, let's have a little fun with our This Is Not Financial Advice segment, where we throw out a completely crazy but maybe kind of brilliant trade idea.
And just to be clear, folks, we are not financial advisors, so don't go betting the farm on this one.
Okay, so here's the play. Tractor Supply is going all in on pet medications with that Aliveth acquisition, right?
Yeah.
What if they totally dominate that market? What if they become the ultimate destination for pet health?
I mean, their stock could explode.
Exactly. So here's the crazy idea. A long-term LP call option on Tractor Supply, betting that their pet medication strategy is going to send their stock price soaring. High risk, high reward.
Again, this is just a thought, not financial advice.
But it's fun to think about the possibilities, right?
Absolutely. All right, well, that wraps up our deep dive into Tractor Supply's Q4 and full year 2024 earnings call. We covered a lot of ground from their financial performance to their plans for the future.
We hope you found it informative and insightful. And as always, we encourage you to do your own research before making any investment decisions.
Thanks for tuning in to Talk Tickers. We'll be back soon with another earnings call deep dive.
Until then, happy investing.